Hey guys, it's Leah and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know the last time I posted was like a month ago and I do apologize for that, but I'm back and I'm ready to make more videos on this account. I think we're all aware by this point that Barcelona's season ended. It literally ended like a week ago. So for today's video, I will be just like reviewing the season as a whole, giving my thoughts and opinions of what went on this season. It has been a pretty disappointing season for Barcelona, going trophyless. And it's just, very sad considering the fact that last season they won the league and the Supercopa de España. So this season, a lot of Barcelona fans expected better, including myself, and it just didn't go Barcelona's way. First, let's get into some general notes of how the season went. Let's start off with the obvious fact that Barcelona's defense this season just wasn't doing well whatsoever, kept conceding a lot, especially in the league when you take into account that last season they had the best defense in La Liga. Aside from that, it felt like Barcelona just wasn't concentrating enough. There were games where they just were starting it and they were sleeping. They weren't paying attention to anything and they conceded very early on in those matches. You also have to take into account that sometimes their passing was off. They weren't reading each other well at times. Like they weren't, catching up on those runs. They just, as a team, I feel like there was a lack of chemistry sometimes. And another big thing was the team's mentality. It felt like they just like kept bottling their leads sometimes. Like they didn't have the right mentality. They thought they already won the game before it ended. And then they tried to play more defensive when they were leading. And that just doesn't work out because Barcelona is never known as a defensive team. And I also feel like it, is much harder to defend a whole game because you get more tired more easily. And of course, the biggest thing was individual mistakes that these players made because they were sleeping or whatever the case is. The individual mistakes they made ended up costing the team. Of course, there's other things that people want to blame, including referees. And while I do agree that the referees this season, not just for Barcelona, but overall, have been making really bad mistakes, I feel like you could never use that as an excuse. But yes, you could hold the referees accountable for just doing their job better. But again, I feel like most of Barcelona's problems come from themselves making those individual mistakes. Another problem for Barca were the injury problems. All the players kept getting injured, but I don't want to use that as an excuse because every club struggles with injuries. However, I do feel like, missing out on Gavi, who got injured earlier on this season with an ACL injury, did hurt the team a lot because I will continue saying this. Gavi is the heart and soul of this team. I feel like he helps out the mentality. And yes, they shouldn't be relying on a 19-year-old to be their only kind of person to like help boost their mentality. But obviously, without him, it feels like a part of Barcelona is missing. Now, if I were to talk about every game this season, we would be here for hours. And you could go check out the match reviews that I did post on my TikTok. I posted for the majority of the games this season. But in this video, I will just be talking about the games that I think were like the biggest games of the season for Barca. And I did want to mention that I'm going to be pretty brief on these games and not as specific because I've already made match reviews on my TikTok account where I was more specific than I'm going to be right now. Starting off with all three El Clasicos this season, which all three Barcelona lost, and it's really frustrating when you take into consideration that for two of those El Clasicos, the ones that were the league matches for this season, Barcelona were leading. And they just completely bottled their lead. And yes, when you go up against Real Madrid, you expect them to score, so you have to be ready for it. But it just felt like they were continuously repeating the same mistakes. Again, mentality, not thinking that you've already won the game just because you're leading by one goal or however many goals, especially against a team like Real Madrid. And you shouldn't be playing defensive football against them because they're really quick on the counterattack and obviously have those fast players that are capable of also scoring. Another thing that I forgot to mention before is Barcelona being unable to convert opportunities. So many chances were created this season, and for some reason the finishing was just off, which just seems like it's the same thing even last season. I said the same thing. Barcelona needs to convert more of the opportunities that they have. In the Supercopa de España final against Real Madrid, I feel like a major issue was the high line that they had because against Real Madrid, they felt very stretched out defensively because of the speed Real Madrid have on the counterattacks. I also feel like they let Real Madrid frustrate them too much, and you simply just can't do that. Even if Real Madrid are leading, you have to continue having the right mentality that you are going to be able to come back from that. You can't, feel sorry for yourself. And I feel like a lot of players felt sorry for themselves this season. Now let's talk about the Copa del Rey quarterfinal against Athletic Club Bilbao. Now I don't think, Barcelona played bad, but I do think that Athletic Club Bilbao is always going to be a hard opponent, especially when they have players like Iñaki Williams and Nico Williams that have that pace. Now, putting that aside, I feel like the bigger thing was obviously needing to convert the opportunities that you have. Multiple chances were created. Barcelona just couldn't put it in the net, which is so upsetting because if they converted those chances, they could have won the match. I do feel like it's the overtime that killed Barca because Barcelona have a lot of young players, a lot of teenagers, whereas Athletic Club Bilbao has a lot of experienced players. And I'm not saying that Barcelona don't have experienced players, it's just I feel like Athletic Club Bilbao definitely have more of those kinds of players. And I did feel like Athletic Club Bilbao were able to like get a second life in overtime, whereas Barcelona, a lot of the youngsters were tired, and once you're tired, your feet are gone, and when your feet are gone, you just simply can't play, and that's just it at the end of the day. And now I do want to talk about, the Champions League matches against Napoli and against PSG, starting off with Napoli, round of 16. The first leg ended in a tie, which I was okay with because then Barcelona were playing at home, which is always an advantage for the most part. I do feel like in the Napoli game, Barcelona started off strong, but again, they thought they already won the game, which allowed Napoli to press up more. And it goes back to having the right mentality. It shouldn't take Napoli scoring for them to like all of a sudden think that they actually have to win the game. I don't know what it is, but they only start playing when the other team equalizes them or scores or whatever the case is. Now, for the home match against Napoli, I was there, I watched it in person. And from watching it in person, it felt like the team was more in sync. It felt like they were reading each other's minds. They had the right intensity. And I do feel like the fans helped out a lot with the chants they were chanting, helping and motivating the team as a whole. And now you have the game against PSG, both legs. The first leg, Barcelona did end up winning, and it was great to see it. I felt like Barcelona, especially in the first half, were outsmarting PSG because PSG were just playing way too quickly, were rushing their decisions, and Barcelona just, were taking their time and actually, trying to make the right decision and the better decision rather than a good decision. There's a difference between a better decision compared to like a decision that's just a really good decision, if that makes sense. Now, aside from that, defensively, Barcelona did a really good job, especially going up against players like Dembele, Mbappe, Barcola, Vitinha. Like, it's always going to be difficult. But I do feel like Barcelona handled it well. I know they lost it in the beginning of the second half for a little bit, but then they brought it back and had a good mentality throughout the game. Now, the second leg was the issue. Even though Barcelona were playing at home, that is where they got knocked out of the Champions League. And it's just disappointing because it all started when Araujo made a really silly challenge on Barcola and ended up getting a red card because he was the last defender. It was very early on in that game, which obviously did cost Barcelona since they're down to 10 men. And yes, being down to 10 men is always difficult, but I really wish that they had the right mentality to keep going. Now, I do want to mention that regardless of how the Champions League went this season and how they got knocked out, I'm still proud that they made it up to the quarterfinals. I know Barcelona's standards are way higher, but when you take into consideration how poorly they've done in the Champions League the last few seasons, I'm proud of how far they have come. Now, moving past that, you also do got to talk about, both the Girona games this season, both games where Barcelona did end up losing, keeping a high line, stretching themselves out way too wide, and then obviously mentality-wise, just not, being there and also making individual mistakes as well. Now, with all the negativity, I did want to talk about, one of Barcelona's best games of the season, which was their away match with Atletico Madrid in the second half of the season, where they ended up winning 3-0. I do feel like the reason why Barcelona played so well in that game is because everybody was giving 100%. It felt like they were connected with one another, they were making the right decisions, and just altogether, they were compact defensively and defended as a unit, which is a very big thing, which is why they ended up keeping a clean sheet. Now, moving past that, we're going to do something that I did on TikTok. Obviously, it's not going to be as detailed since I already made a video about it like on TikTok, but we're going to be talking about the best player of the season, best signing of the season, unsung hero, most improved player, and flop of the season. Now, for best player of the season, I have Lamine Yamal and Gundogan. Gundogan created so many opportunities for Barca, and even with the injuries in the midfield, he played a key role there. Now, in regards to Lamine Yamal, 16 years old and being the best attacker that Barcelona have is crazy and insane, and he deserves the title of being the best player for Barca this season. Now, for signing of this season, I have Gundogan. I mean, getting him on a free and what he did this season absolutely deserved. Now, I did want to mention the lone players, Joao Cancelo and Joao Felix. I do feel like both of them have been inconsistent. Joao Cancelo more in the most important matches of the season, and Joao Felix more throughout, the season as a whole. But I do feel like they have come in clutch, at times this season, and they deserve, some respect because they, have helped out the team, and I do appreciate everything they've done for Barcelona. Now, for unsung hero, I got Christensen and Rafinha. Rafinha, stepped up in the PSG game and has been stepping up a lot this season, either scoring, assisting, creating opportunities, and his work rate this season, in general, even last season, but his work rate this season has truly shined. Now, the reason I mentioned Christensen is because he became Barcelona's CDM in the second half of the season because Barcelona truly needed a CDM, and he never complained about it. And ever since he became the CDM, it felt like Barcelona definitely improved in terms of like defensively, and he helped out Barcelona a lot because before that, Barcelona was definitely a liability defensively with like that whole pivot position. So I do feel like Christensen definitely helped out the team a lot. Now, for most improved player, I put Kunde. I definitely think he's improved in that right back position. That is not his natural position. We all know that he is a center back. Putting that aside, I think he's done a great job. I feel like he's gotten more comfortable moving upwards and really, taking on that right back role. And finally, for flops of the season, I put Araujo and Frankie. And it hurts me a lot because, I do think they're still great players, but compared to the last season where they were considered some of the best players of the season, this season has not went their way. For Frankie, he started the season strong and it looked like he would be one of the best players this season, but then he kept getting injured in his right ankle, and because of that, there was inconsistency with his performance. Now, in the case of Araujo, it's no secret that this season has been really shaky for him, and yes, he has stepped up a bunch of times, but obviously he got 2 red cards, the Supercopa de España, and then, against PSG, and I feel like, he felt very shaky overall this season. But I do still feel like he's one of Barcelona's best defenders, and you could definitely see the difference because when he's not, performing at his best, it does feel like the team does, struggle in general because he is key to that defense. Special mention to Fermin because he's had an incredible season. He's the second top goal scorer joint with Varane this season for Barca. Xavi, took a chance on him, allowed him to play El Clasico preseason where he shocked many people with his goal, got a lot of opportunities this season on the first team, and has, played amazingly. He offers a lot of that intensity, energy that Barcelona lack at times. He's constantly running around, trying to win back the ball, helping out defensively if necessary. He never feels sorry for himself. He's, even if he loses the ball, you see him running, trying to win back the ball. And he plays a very direct style of football and is not afraid to shoot outside the box, which I absolutely love. I feel like without Fermin, the absence of Gavi would have been felt a lot more because Fermin and Gavi have the same kind of vibe where they're adding that intensity onto the field. And even though Gavi is really important for Barca, I feel like Fermin helped cover at least, half of like Gavi's absence in a way. Shout out to all the Barcelona youngsters this season: Marc Guiu, Fermin Lopez, Hector Fort, Paco Barce, Lamine Yamal, etc. All of them show their professionalism this season, and they're the main like positive takeaway of the season overall. They've really helped out the club a lot this season. And finally, I think we're all aware that Xavi will not be Barcelona's manager for next season. It's sad, first he was leaving, then he was staying, then he was leaving. It was a whole roller coaster in itself, and I can make a separate video on that if you guys like. But obviously, we all know that Hansi Flick is going to be the next manager for Barcelona next season. And as much as I will be missing Xavi, I am excited to see Hansi Flick, at the club. I think he has that experience. He's a known winner, and I think he's going to bring the right mentality and physicality that the squad currently needs. Anyways, guys, that is the end of the video. Be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Be sure to follow me on all my socials, especially my TikTok account. I'm really active on there. I post match reviews on there, so be sure to go follow it if you haven't yet. And yeah, hope you guys like the video. Bye, guys.